I don't know about you, but for me, Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, stands out more than any of the other films in the Star Trek movie franchise. It is the only one that I know of that really talked about environmental issues and at the same time talked about endangered species. And continuing with that, it also showed respect for a tragedy that had taken place earlier that year. The tragedy was the Challenger disaster. And at the beginning of the movie, even before the Paramount movie credits begin, we have a, a dedication to that crew. The cast and crew of the Star Trek wish to dedicate this film to the men and women of the spaceship Challenger whose courage, spirit shall live to the 23rd century and beyond. Now, when you consider today, most of the people who watch television don't get to see amazing things like we did back in the 80s and even in the 70s. Heck, I think even up to the early 2000s, the space shuttle launching, orbiting, and coming back to Earth. It was just an amazing thing to watch, especially if you grew up in Florida. There were times when you could see the trail of the space shuttle from the other side of the state. It was just an amazing thing to watch. And for Star Trek to show respect for the tragedy that took place that same year in 86 is a beautiful thing. And of course, the other issue that I'm talking about is whale hunting. More so, the humpback whale was almost wiped out. And if it wasn't for Star Trek 4 bringing environmental issues and a genocide of a species to the front of the audience, putting it right there on the big screen for them to see, I do not believe whale hunting would have been pulled back as much as it did. Star Trek 4 had a major impact. A piece of information I found on the internet says that in the fall of 1986, 1 year after Back to the Future, Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, not only became a, a massive success at the box office, it also propels climate change and concerns for endangered species into the mainstream. In short, Star Trek tried literally to save the whales in 1986, and it basically worked. As for the movie itself, the only thing that bothered me about this film was that when it came out on VHS, this was the cover that we got. This was the movie poster that they were going with, versus the other one that I showed at the beginning of the video, which was a more colorful and more detailed picture. This thing, which would start following onto Laserdisc, DVD, would just be the movie poster they would use for the next 3 decades, and it would drive me insane. I don't like this poster, but that's just me. Okay, with that said, I got a question for all of you. If this movie was just brand new this year coming to the movies, do you think it would have made any money? Do you think Star Trek fans would have liked it? Well, CBR.com would disagree with you if you said yes. Star Trek fans would hate The Voyage Home. If it were released today, Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home is considered one of the greatest franchise films, but fans today would hate the comedy and the overt political messaging. No, they wouldn't, because a lot of those messages that's out there today were the same back then. This part right here is something that I totally disagree with. Fans today would say that The Voyage Home disrespects the story and characters. Not one bit does it do any of that. Not one bit. Many fans thought The Search for Spock was a cynical movie. Kirk's newly discovered son dies simply for shock value. The Enterprise is destroyed, and some fans felt resurrecting Spock undercut the impact of his sacrifice in Star Trek II. Decidedly absent from all of these films was a clear sense of fun. The Voyage Home is more comedy than any other genre. Scotty, one of the greatest engineers in Starfleet, talks to a computer mouse. Spock tries out cursing and is bad at it. When the movie wants fun fans to think Chekhov is going to die, it still makes time for jokes. Dr. McCoy gives an old woman a pill that grows her new kidney. The escape from the hospital is a slapstick chase, though, through the hallways and complete with silly music from Leonard Roseman's score. Now, let's take apart some of this, shall we?
Perhaps the professor could use your computer. Please.
Computer? Computer? Ah. Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
The keyboard. How quaint.
Okay, now imagine that same scene happening in today's world. They walk into the room, they're discussing the glass for the water, and he walks up to the computer, except in today's world, that would be more like Microsoft's Bing artificial intelligence. He'd walk up to it and have to type the word computer. Computer. And the response, searching for the word you'd like to know. A computer is an electronic device that basically Scotty would have to do the exact same things he did there that he would do here. That same scene in today's world with some minor tweaking would still work fine.
What's the matter with you?
Kidney dialysis.
Dialysis?
My God, what is this, the Dark Ages?
Here. You swallow that. And if you have any problems, just call me.
Fully functional.
In doing some research, I found that the person on dialysis has a life expectancy of 5 to 10 years, but there have been cases where they've lived a full life on dialysis. But now be honest about this. All the suffering that people have to go through the procedure, taking one quick pill would cure it, grow a new kidney. People absolutely would love that. That's why I still think that this little bit right here would still be funny today. As for the real premise, the basic premise of the movie, whale hunting, it can still be used today. Not necessarily the whale hunting, but the whales going extinct because the planet's oceans are heating up. And there is plenty of evidence out there to prove that the waters are not cool enough to sustain the fish. Thousands of dead fish washed ashore beaches along the Texas Gulf Coast. Here's why. Basically, the waters had risen above 70 degrees Fahrenheit, killing off what oxygen the fish need to survive, and these thousands of fish floated to the surface. So this type of story could be used in the new Star Trek 4. The whales could be wiped out of existence because the waters got too hot for them to survive in. So they travel back in time to prevent the probe from wreaking havoc, because the probe's trying to talk to the whales. They travel back in time to pick up the whales before the water temperatures and global warming results in their extinction. Now remember, just a few moments ago, at the beginning of the article, the author went on to say that they would hate the movie today because it would hate the comedy and the overt political messages or the messaging. Well, let me tell you how Star Trek has handled political messaging in the 21st century. Political messages? Today's world is overloaded with political messages, activist messages, all sorts of messages thrown at us through our films. A lot of people got very upset at this one scene in Star Trek Beyond. And basically they said George Takei, or Takai, depending on how you pronounce it, was to be honored in this movie. They changed Sulu's character. Mr. Sulu in the original series and in the movies was a straight man. But because George Takei was a well-known gay man, they decided to turn Sulu gay. And even George himself said, thank you, but no. This character was written a certain way. He was a straight man, and you should respect the author, Gene Roddenberry, and what he did with the character. Again, there's a lot of political messaging even in the modern day Star Trek, and that is why I think that is where Star Trek has a lot of problems today. Too many political messaging instead of just coming right out with the real message that we want to talk about. And Star Trek 4 back in the 80s was the best messaging that they came out with. Whale hunting was evil. It was killing off whales. There was maybe 10,000 of them by the time they were filming in 1986 or actually 1985 with Star Trek 4. And this brought everything out for everyone to see. So, could Star Trek 4 be remade today? If it was even a brand new film out, would it work? I think if they leave the basic principles of the story intact, tweak it a little bit to adjust it to modern day events that are going on, not the political correctness of everything, but I mean, like I said to you before about the temperatures in the ocean rising and how that could cause the whales to become extinct. The probe's coming, they got to go back in time to find some whales, and they have to come back to a time before the waters and the global heating of the planet kills off the whales. I think that is still a great premise. Scotty and the computer joke, I still think that is funny. And the lady in the hospital growing a new kidney again. Those were all good things that helped make this movie a classic. And I do believe audiences would enjoy this movie, even if it was brand new coming out today. So tell me what you think about this. I'm curious to know what your opinions are on this one. Until the next time, my friends, God bless, and I will see you soon.